Today we're going to thread a backplate with the help of Joey. In order to do this, step one is grab all the components, pull them out of the bag, and throw away the instructions because we're men. We take all the parts and just kind of spill them out onto the table, and we're going to see that we have 4 D-rings. A couple of them are bent, a couple of them are straight. There's some little stainless steel retaining clips, and there's a couple pieces of folded material. But the first thing we're going to start with is the actual webbing itself. When you unroll the webbing, you're going to see the dead center in the middle of the webbing, there is a grommet. That grommet lines up with a hole that's at the top of the backplate. So we have the backplate oriented so the part facing up is the part that goes against your back, and then the back side of it, the part that's pointing down, is the part that is going to go toward the tank. Line up that grommet with the top hole, and then just pull the webbing on through the slanted hole. Not the top one, but the slanted one, the second one from the top. At this point, you see you're struggling with it a little bit because there's an anti-chafing sleeve that goes around the webbing at that point. Now, some people just use plain webbing, in which case the anti-chafing sleeve may not be there. In which case, you want to keep an eye on that throughout your diving career. Check that webbing every now and then and make sure that it isn't starting to cut through. Then he just runs it back through the top hole, heading again back toward the back of the plate, and he's going to push that anti-chafing material through there as well. Let's take a close-up look at the anti-chafing material. Here you can see the anti-chafing material that is going around the webbing there, just to protect it going through. Okay, so now we simply do the other side. Here's a close-up look. You're going to come up through the slanted piece, push the anti-chafing material through there, and then we're going to go up through the top piece, and that's what it'll look like at that point. The next thing we need to do is add the shoulder D-rings. Take one of those retaining clips and you thread it onto one of the shoulders. Then you slide the D-ring on, and we're using one of the bent D-rings, and then back down through the other slot in the retaining clip. Now, most people want these to be in the middle of their shoulder. You can adjust this later by pulling the webbing on through there. So we're going to just pick a spot for now, try to make a good guess, and load it in there. It's important to note there's a couple of different ways to assemble that thing. We've done it with the bend so the ring faces up. It's also possible to do them where the ring faces down. That'll make it lay flatter against the webbing. When they're sticking up, however, it does make it easier in order to clip something onto it when you're trying to hook something rapidly. But people prefer it both ways. But don't use just the plain straight ones. But you can experiment which way you prefer it, whether it be up or down. That's really your choice, your option. So now we'll have Joey thread the other side. Let's make that a little quicker. There we go. So simply through the D-ring, and let's get them so they're lined up nice and even with each other. So the next thing we want to do is add some of the anti-chafing. There's these 2 little sleeves that came with the kit, and we're going to slide that onto each one of the shoulder straps. Then we want to take the webbing and run it from the inside of the 2 bottom ones and back out through the back. It's going to come back up through the outside one. Now, it's important that this is oriented properly. Here I put a piece of tape on it so you can see that the top side of the webbing coming over is the part that is facing the outside of the plate when it goes through. Then we come back up with the webbing through the outside hole and get our anti-chafing material in there, pull everything up nice and tight. Obviously, again, we can adjust this after we're all done to make sure that it fits based on your size, shoulder length, etc. After we're done with the one side, Joey's simply going to thread through the other one, again, making sure that the top part is facing the outside of the plate, go in, back up. After we're done doing that, we want to add the D-rings that are going to be our waist D-rings. We put one of the retaining clips on, and these are going to be the straight D-rings. That goes on the webbing next. Then we simply run the webbing back down through the other side of the retaining ring, and then slide this wherever you need it to be, probably starting out about 8 inches, 10 inches or so from the plate itself. And you can adjust them again later. Now we'll do the other side as well. Simply run the retaining ring through there, a D-ring, and then back through the retaining ring. Then we'll slide that on down again, so we're about 8 to 10 inches away from the plate. Move it however you want, change them later if you so desire. Next thing we want to put on is the crotch strap. Now there's a couple different crotch straps available. This happens to be a 2-inch webbing crotch strap that we're showing here. There's also 1-inch webbing straps. That's why at the bottom of the plate you'll see there's a couple of holes. One of them is a 2-inch hole, one's a 1-inch hole. Since we have the 2-inch, we're going to run it up through the bigger hole. And he's simply going to run the piece of webbing on through the hole from the top going down, and then you'll see that there's a buckle, and the webbing will go up through the buckle and back down. Now, they don't give you an anti-chafing piece to put in there. Hopefully there's not too much pressure on your crotch strap. That could make for painful diving. Then the right-hand side of the waist panel is going to go through the loop that's in there. There's our scooter ring, and that's how all that hooks on. The last thing that we put on is simply the buckle. You want to make sure that goes on the right-hand strap because that's going to give it a left-hand release. That way, just by touch, you'll be able to determine whether or not you have reached down and grabbed your weight belt, which should be a right-hand release, or the plate, which is going to be a left-hand release. There's 3 holes in that buckle. It'll come up through the first one pretty easy because that hole is a little larger. That's because we're going to go through it twice. So we go up through the first, down through the second, back up, and then we're going to go back out through the first hole again. That's going to lock our webbing in really good and keep it out of the way. Now, if you have a lot left over, feel free to cut that off and then just seal the edges so it doesn't fray with a cigarette lighter, or you can just run it through the loop on the crotch strap. At this point, our plate is totally webbed up and we're good. Now, it's important to note that this is not the only way that it can be done. In fact, some people prefer to run their straps instead of like we did, where they come out on the sides like that, they crisscross them. And it's okay to do it that way too. So at least hopefully we gave you some ideas on how to put this stuff together, and if you have any questions, feel free to call us.